Do you really love them? I came across this Reddit post from about a year ago, which I want to share with you. The title is, I've been married for 30 years, but I've never been in love with my wife. My wife is my best friend, and she has been my best friend since before we were married. I was deeply and passionately in love with the girlfriend I had before my wife. And no, it wasn't just lust. I'm old enough now to fully understand the difference. However, she turned out to be an awful person. I'm still in love with the idea of her, not the person she actually is, and I think I will always carry a torch for the idea of her. My wife is on the opposite end of the spectrum, and the contrasting positive relationship we developed was incredibly refreshing. So, is it dishonest to tell my wife I love her? Not at all. My wife is my best friend, and I love her as my best friend. My wife, like all people, has her flaws, but she is the best human being I have ever met. I have never felt worthy of her love and friendship. I feel this way mainly because if my wife were to ask me if I was in love with her, which carries a very different meaning, I would be compelled to lie and say yes. Because the truth would be such a painful betrayal of all we've worked together to achieve over the last 30 plus years. I've never confided in anyone with this secret for fear that it would somehow get back to my wife and hurt her. I even hesitated to put this online anonymously, but the end of my life is near, and I wanted someone to know that you can't always have everything in life. For me, I will never know a deep and passionate love again. I count myself fortunate to have known such a love once in my life. However, I count myself more fortunate to have spent decades with my best friend. It seems the Rolling Stones played the anthem of my life. You can't always get what you want, but I think it's safe to say that we both got what we needed. And when I take a hard look at those around me of a similar age, we truly are the lucky ones. I don't really feel better for getting this off my chest. It was somewhat cathartic to write it out and examine it, but this, like other secrets that will do more harm than good, will be taken to my grave. It does make me wonder how many painful secrets my own parents and grandparents took to their graves. It is the last gift we give our children that they will never appreciate until they give such a gift to their children. The responses were varied, but with not a small number of people calling him a selfish coward, hating him for robbing his wife of the chance to spend her life with someone who truly loved her, and much worse comments apart from this. But what is love? Is it a feeling? Is it thinking of someone every day, even if you're not with them? This man was missing the toxic relationship he had with his ex-girlfriend, which had many more emotional highs and lows than the healthy relationship he has with his wife. He acknowledges that his ex was an awful person, and that he misses the idea of her rather than the real her. I think the main issue here is that he seems to believe that love is primarily a feeling, and so the one you love most, the one you're truly in love with, is the one you experience the strongest emotional highs for. And that is not what he had with the woman he married and spent the last 30 years with. But a healthy relationship is never going to meet that unrealistic expectation. Real life, with its imperfections, boring day-to-day routines, and plain realities, can never beat the emotional highs and lows of fantasies based on a concept of a person who doesn't really exist. So many people go through life choosing partners based on who they feel strongest about. And this can be a terrible idea because our feelings are often deeply unreliable. Anyone who has experienced a significant amount of life at all will have felt strongly about someone who didn't treat them well. And it's easy to pedestalize things about them. We tell ourselves a story that they were wonderful despite treating us badly. Sex is great when you're being treated like shit, or when you know that you can't keep that person, because that's the only thing that you have that's positive. So you magnify it and revel in it. And sometimes you never even get that honeymoon period, even in healthy relationships. Things like relationship anxiety, relationship OCD, strong avoidant attachment, etc. can prevent you from feeling in love. Chasing the certainty of a binary yes or no answer to questions such as, am I really in love? Are they the best person for me? Will block being able to feel in love. Real certainty isn't possible. Those who feel certain at one time often feel that they were very wrong at another time in the future. And feelings can't be forced, they come and go as they please, and as such, they can't be the defining factor in how you live your life. The truth is, love is a choice. Mature love isn't a teenage fantasy or a rush of dopamine, but how you show up and what you actually do for the other person, even when you don't feel like it. Which brings me to the next topic I wanted to talk about. I want to bring in one of the most evil and awful villains ever portrayed in cinema history, Rose from the 1997 movie Titanic. At the end of the movie, we see her as an old woman at the end of her life, telling the crew of a ship who had been hunting for a precious gemstone from the Titanic, that she had in her possession the whole time, by the way, about her adventure with the other main character of the movie, Jack Dawson, whom she met and had a brief romance with when she journeyed on the Titanic as a 17-year-old girl. She survived the sinking, but Jack did not. After Jack died, this woman found a man who married her, stuck by her, gave her a home, and raised children and grandchildren with her. And yet, in her retelling of her story, her husband was not even part of her story. Her true love was this guy that she met on vacation when she was a teenager, the guy she fucked on a boat and concluded that this was true love, a love that never got to be tested. The philosopher Slavoj Zizek wrote about this. Is Cameron's Titanic really about the catastrophe of the ship hitting the iceberg? One should be attentive to the precise moment of the catastrophe. It takes place when the two young lovers, immediately after consummating their amorous link in the sexual act, return to the ship's deck. Rose passionately says to her lover that when the ship will reach New York the next morning, she will leave with him, preferring poor life with her true love to the false, corrupted life among the rich. At this moment, the ship hits the iceberg in order to prevent what would have undoubtedly been the true catastrophe, namely the couple's life in New York. One can safely guess that soon the misery of everyday life would destroy their love. The catastrophe thus occurs in order to save their love, in order to sustain the illusion that if it were not to happen, they would have lived happily ever after. Zizek's critique of Rose gets even more scathing, but it goes beyond the scope of this video, so I won't go further here, as tempting as it is, but the link is in the description. The fantasy you feel for the one that got away will always seem stronger to you than anything you encounter in real life, because you never got to test it. Their leaving was the iceberg which froze in time your fantasy of them. There was nothing that Rose's husband could have done to make her love him in equal proportion to the love, time, and energy that he put into the relationship. Because Rose chose instead to keep feeding a fantasy of her idealized memory. Like the man in the Reddit post felt about his ex-girlfriend, that emotional high was what he and Rose defined true love as. And I have also done the same before. Rose would never have to experience the decline of honeymoon period feelings. She would never have to get used to Jack's really annoying traits. She would have never had to see him on his worst days. She'd never get to argue with him or go through difficult times together with him. She didn't have to do any of the difficult stuff that would have tested the truth of her love, and yet she subjugated her real-life experience to below that of her fantasy. Later in the Reddit thread, someone wisely asked, "When you say that you've never been in love with your wife, are you saying that you never went through the obsessive, brain chemical-driven honeymoon period, even in the beginning? You went straight to the deep, comfortable love many relationships eventually become?" To which the original poster replied, "We were friends before we were lovers, so in a way, yes, our love was deep and very comfortable long before we ever had intercourse. So it has never been the tear your clothes off kind. It has always been slow, meaningful, and deeply satisfying. It would be unimaginable for either of us to just have sex at this point. We always make love." I think that this man was in love with his wife. He just confused love with infatuation. Had he been able to live out life with his ex-girlfriend, he might have got to the point where her awfulness would have eventually killed the emotions he had for her. And if Rose had ever made it to New York with Jack, perhaps she too would have fallen out of love with him. Real love isn't as exciting as the fantasy of limerence. Real love isn't like a movie. Real love involves choosing to do loving things and behave in loving ways, even through weeks and months of not having the feelings to go along with it. I'm not saying that it would be healthy to never feel anything, but I think it's important to remember that love primarily is not a feeling, but a continual choice to be made. All the while, those feelings are coming and going. So, everyone looking for love should ask themselves this: are you looking for and capable of and satisfied by real love or only the fantasy of it? Thank you very much for listening.